Some bands stick to something tried and true, and some bands take leaps guaranteed to kill any momentum they've built along the way. My guests today, the boys from In Fear, demonstrate that somewhere in the middle lies the sweetest of spots. A place called home where the riffs are ferocious, but still feel like a place that Jack built years ago when you weren't quite ready for what comes next. In Fear's new release comes out in May, but in the interim, they're working hard to keep your whistle wet. As is a new standard in the music business, In Fear are releasing exciting singles, each brimming with energy and aggression. If you thought you liked them before, wait until you read the barometer, where a low-pressure front is sure to create some lightning in its path. This is the way to something new and bold. This is In Fear, and you're listening to your favorite long-form music show, Rockstar Superhero.
Over the time you guys have been together as a band, you went from being sort of a more predictable, and I mean this in all the right ways.
No, you can say it, man.
Yeah,
we'll agree with you.
Yeah. A more predictable sort of metalcore, you know what I mean? Kind of what was happening in 2017 thing, right? The current wave of popularized metal is how I think of it. And you've kind of flipped it on its ear, and you've become rather violent in your approach. And for an old geezer like me who is trying to keep an ear to the ground of what's coming, I love being on the forefront of this. And so I guess my welcome today, guys, is to say thanks for making the journey to be on the show today, and thank you so much for bringing this new noise to In Fear, because I think I'm stoked beyond belief to have you guys around.
I mean, we're just as stoked to be where we are right now. It's been a long time coming, longer than you'd believe, really.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Where can we start off with that? Because, yeah, the EP. Little nugget of information though. The EP, we actually had a fair bit of assistance writing. We had assistance from our current producer now, George Lever, and our pre-producer, George Christie. Mm-hmm. And the story behind that was basically we were a brand new band, no different to anyone that you'd see down your local bar or whatever, like opening the night. Mm-hmm. And we didn't know how to write songs on the level of the people that we look up to. So the EP was basically a harsh learning curve from those guys to teach us how to write what we wanted to write.
Yeah.
So after the EP, we took away all the lessons we learned from that, and everything after that has been a true representation of what we've learned from that part.
Yeah, that's quite a good way of explaining it, to be fair, Ben. We're quite we're quite open to creative input. So George Lever's great at that, and his creative input is quite big in terms of what we do. Mm-hmm. But we definitely took the EP as our opportunity to learn. I joined the band slightly later, so I came in basically after the EP was written, and then I came in during the recording phase, so I kind of didn't have much say in the construction of the songs and stuff like that. But it was as we were tracking drums in Middle Farm. Yeah, exactly.
We got Ryan to come along, and we were just basically cornering him into the corner of the studio. Nice. Going, you joining our band. Yeah.
But I vividly remember that, and then but this is a long time ago. This is for us anyway. It was at the start of the band, really. It's within the first year of the band being a thing. So we're talking 2017, really. Mm-hmm. And then, like you said, I think, to be honest, the way you described it, Rob, was really good. So when you were saying about how back then, we were sort of a little bit more predictable, I guess, is the easiest way of explaining it. And
good, but predictable. Yeah,
exactly. And we were stoked on the fact that we just had music that did a thing, and it sounded cool-ish. But we didn't know like how to have an identity really, and then and that was where the turning point was, because we had some sit-down chats with George, and we were like, right, we really want to take this to the next level. And we want to try and create something that is a bit different, or that does give us an identity and does stand out. And I think that's where the new stuff sort of comes into play, because for songs like Abyss that we released at the beginning of December, it's got much more of a unique identity, I think, that sort of solidifies like who we are. And I think what you said about the name as well, I think when I listen to like that song, I definitely I feel the atmosphere of the song, and I think that translates with it resonates with the name quite well as well. Right. So I think there's a thing around that with bands and art, I guess, if you want to call it that, because I think like moving away from just writing songs to have fun and then trying to create something that's a bit more artistic, I guess. And I think that's kind of where we've ended up more recently. It's like we've looked at the music as, right, how can we create something that is an expression of like us, and trying to also do that in a unique way is quite difficult. So that's where we've really explored some of these different sounds and like atmospheres and things with the music. So well, so here's what I want to say about that, because I mean I'm listening to the things both of you were saying, and as an outsider, I agree with that 1,000%. But interestingly, you guys don't know this about me, but I was a professional performing musician in my last life, in a sense, right? I mean, that's where I was. And so I understand the things you guys have gone through, but the something about what you're experiencing now is so brilliant, because it's something most musicians, creatives, etc., don't even consider, which is the identity piece. How do you find yourself in a world full of X-type bands, right? So name a genre, like I mentioned metalcore before, or black metal, or groove metal, or pop metal, or dance pop, right? Whatever the genre is, not just metal. But it's so easy to say, well, this is kind of what I want to be because this is what I'm hearing around me. It's really, really hard to trust that whatever you create, whatever you give yourself over to, is what's going to become you. And that's where the fingerprint is. The fingerprint is that piece where it's not so much the F it, like, screw it, I'm going to do whatever I'm going to do. It's realizing that what you do already is awesome. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a really good point. And actually honing into that is quite difficult, because you've got to be really in touch with yourself and understanding like what do you as individuals bring to the table, and what about that is good and what about that isn't so good, and then trying to strip out the bad stuff to create something that is really interesting to listen to. Sonic identity is so important nowadays. I mean, the bands that are we're in a phase at the moment with music, especially in this genre, I think, and Ben will agree, I'm sure, that there's a lot of bands that are suddenly getting a lot of attention that have a really unique sonic identity. And I think like we sort of cottoned on to that was coming, and we really wanted to be part of that and try and create something different. I think like on reflection, I don't, because all artists are sort of somewhat unsatisfied with their own work, and I think like for us, I don't want to blow our own trumpet too much, because I do think like if I was looking at it very honestly as a self-reflective piece, I'd probably say that we didn't quite get it exactly as it could have been, but I think we did a pretty good job and we're pretty happy with it.
But we made large changes to the body of work that we're slowly releasing, because we wrote a lot of these songs back in, I don't know, 2018, early 2019, something like that. Then it maybe wasn't until just after COVID that we revisited them and thought, this isn't how all of these songs have to sound. We can hone in on this. We can dissect it. We can take everything that we love about each song and just focus on that part, spreading that across the whole song. So it's been an ongoing process. It's not just like, I want to write music like this and then suddenly you have a song.
Sure.
No, it's been a really really like laborious. Well, not laborious, that's the wrong word. It's been a really long time coming. Yeah. It's been a lot of fun though. Like the time that we've spent just in the studio messing about with stuff, and then suddenly something clicks and you just like, that's everything we were looking for. That's going straight in. And it's really cool.
I think like another thing that really helps with some of this stuff is like the production element and coming up with sounds that work well together and atmospheres. And something that I'd say George taught us a lot about was trying to think about how you're going to make people feel with the music and what is it that you're trying to convey, basically. So that like, although it is basically it's metal, whatever, but it is trying to convey different emotions, and like different songs have different feelings and atmospheres, and like having a comprehension of that and the sound design aspect is really important. And that was something that we learned a lot about during the writing phase of this work that we're now releasing. So it's really cool, really exciting stuff.
I find it really wild too that on the surface, it's really easy for somebody like myself who's been around a long time and has a lot of different sort of musical influences, things that have touched me over the last, say, 50 years of my life, right? I've been around a long time, and I started on, bands like ABBA and, you know what I mean? The really soft stuff, the safe stuff, because I think my parents thought, well, we don't want our son to get too hardcore too fast, right? Like when Kiss got popular, that scared the crap out of every parent in the world, because it was
still scare me, man.
right. There was this, all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, is this really Satan? You know what I mean? It was a weird time. And then Ozzy broke, right? And so everything sort of got crazier and darker. But I don't know. I love looking at your material, for example, and saying I can see and hear what I believe to be influences, but those aren't necessarily your influences. They're things I've heard, and I recognize what I've heard, what I've been influenced by, and I say, oh, I hear it in your words, and you're like, we don't listen to Slipknot, or name a band, right? That's certainly in that upper echelon that people assume you've followed, right? And that's not fair. I mean, and I actually wrote that down in my notes yesterday. I was like, Slipknot, Deftones, you know what I mean? And even local bands like, Raptors is from Bristol too, aren't they?
Yes. Actually, my girlfriend is their touring photographer.
I love those guys. Simon's a buddy of mine, Matt and Simon. All of them now, actually. But
all of them are lovely.
They are lovely people. I guess what I should say is that we can't help but be influenced, and there's nothing wrong with it. But if you find you're influenced by enough things, they actually dilute into a perfect soup that becomes you. You get
that's quite a good point.
You get these little variations.
I think like a lot of, and again, going back to the uniqueness thing, a lot of bands, when they write stuff and they write it influenced by, they get that almost confused with, I'm writing it like this person.
Right.
And it almost just comes off as like, oh, okay, you've done a carbon copy almost. Do you know what I mean? And it's not that they've literally ripped the notes, note for note. It's that like, if you hear it, you just instantly go, oh yeah, it's that band or whatever.
Right.
And when you're
hard to avoid.
Yeah, it is hard to avoid. And I think like with the stuff that when we were talking about Abyss, for example, like that, there's a riff in that we always talk about as the Slipknot riff, because it's like, you hear it and you're like, oh, okay, it sounds like Slipknot a little bit. But we play in drop F, and Slipknot don't play in drop F. Do you know what I mean? And the production's different, and like it's just completely different. So,
but that's such a musician response to be like, well, actually, we're in drop E flat.
But it's like it's so funny because like you hear that, and we refer to it as that, and then it's just down to whether people hear it and go, oh, it's definitely from Slipknot, or whether they go, oh, that's a cool Slipknot inspired thing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's there's a fine line there that's quite hard to find the balance. Do you know what I mean? And I think with Abyss, for example, I think when we heard back the final mix, or even like the first mix, we were like, this is really cool because you can hear that there's an influence there, but it's not that carbon copy thing that we were talking about. And and same with like where people have noticed things like Deftones and, you know, with the vocals or whatever they want to say, with like the drifty sort of vocals that are a bit dreamy. And I just like that people are picking up on different influences, but not necessarily able to pinpoint exactly like what it is, you know. And I think that's really cool.
Right.
I think that's awesome.
Yeah. And who knows? I mean, I don't know. Are you familiar with the German band Future Palace?
No, I'm not. No.
Okay. Or how about October Ends?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Well, so October Ends would be sort of in the pseudo similar genre of kind of what you guys do, right? In a way.
Yeah.
They have a much more dancey feel. There's more of a house vibe in what they're doing than the heavy stuff. But you could be saying that very thing. Well, geez, actually, you don't know us, as I'm totally influenced by October Ends. But because they're not some big giant band, how would you know? And I guess it still comes down to you know, Ben and Ryan make a certain sound together. That's the way it is. And if it happens to have certain flavors of these sounds, that's okay. But if you actually take the time to listen to the entirety of what we released so far and where we're going, you'll see we are unique.
Yeah,
and having the fearlessness to be unique, Ryan.
Yeah, definitely. I think so. I think me and Ben like talked about that quite a lot, to be fair, because we got to this point where it was like, I remember initially because Abyss was like the first song, wasn't it, Ben? I think that we demoed for this body of work.
Yeah, after the EP, it was the first single, first track we wrote.
And I remember like we were both quite resistant at first to the idea that this song was suddenly going to be really a bit, I don't know what the right way to describe it is, but it's just a bit more out there, and like we were being more honest and less copying going on, you know, and direct influence happening from these bands where you could really pinpoint it. Mm-hmm. And this song came about and it just had way more sonic identity and it sounded more unique, and we were initially quite afraid of that, I think. Is the way to describe it.
Well,
we didn't really know the juxtaposition.
It was the juxtaposition, wasn't it? Because we just went, oh well, we've just released this EP that's through and through metalcore, and now we've got this really cool other track. If we just drop this, what's everyone going to think? They're not going to see the progression. So
absolutely,
we did take. I've mentioned this before, but we did take big steps, like with the singles we released in between the EP and what we're releasing now. We tailored each song to sort of progress closer to what Abyss sounds like. Sort of like getting listeners ready, just taking them on a journey from point A to point B. And it's nice that we're actually here now and we can start putting out the music that we really enjoy making.
I mean, if I can interrupt, I would encourage you to keep evolving. The but is from the outside as a fan, and I'm not saying a but in regards to what you guys have created, but I'm sure you've seen bands that really sort of thumb their nose at what their fans enjoy, and they're like, their whole thing is I do what I like to do because it's my music, and if a fan, somebody finds it to be joyful or interesting or intriguing, they'll follow me. But I don't care if I get followers. I just want to do what I've got to do, and I think that's insane. Now I have a friend like that. I'm not going to name him, but I guarantee you guys know who he is, and he's broken the world apart with new genres, new styles. He's a Norwegian artist. He is unbelievable. He's one of the most talented people I've ever met. But because there is such an effort to break the direction and to break the rules and to break the genre and the stereotypes of this particular musical thing, he's completely alienated his fan base. I mean 1000%. But here's what's interesting. Now this new song comes out and it's the biggest thing he's ever done. But it's because all the people who were fans went away. And all the fans of this style of music, this dancey sort of vibey house thing, are like, oh my God, I just discovered this new band that's been around 20 years, but used to be a metal band, and now they're a dance band. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, of course. Because this sort of thing, actually, I mean, Ben would be good at talking about this as well. But this sort of thing happened with Bring Me the Horizon a bit, didn't it? Because they were like, they've been genre shifting for ages now, and I'm personally like, true. And I'm like one of those people where I personally think that's so sick. I think it's really sick, and like I don't care if. Like, I know that people get funny about stuff like this. Like, I know that fans get aggravated by big changes in sound and things like that. But I just think it's really cool because I'd rather listen to an artist do something that they really enjoy, that's got true integrity and that they love it, and then hear that product as opposed to, we're going to do album number 1 5 times. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, I don't really want that. And I don't think that's inspiring at all.
Well, the whole reason you get into a band is because you're enjoying music from people that enjoy making that music. So if they're just people pleasing and they're making, like you say, the same album 5 times over, they're not enjoying it anymore. So how can you enjoy it as a listener? There's no like soul left in it from the actual artist.
Yeah. I mean, if you listen to the Eagles, again, this helps that I'm a lot older, right? Because I grew up on the Eagles as an example. And you listen to them and they didn't really evolve as a band. They started out really as a country and bluegrass band, and they ended up in a country rock sort of vibe, but that was still a subtle shift. It wasn't extreme, like going from jazz to metal to dance music, where you're constantly thumbing your nose at your audience. I like the idea of what you guys did, going from, is it pronounced Erebus? Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah.
So going from Erebus to Abyss, you still hear the core of the band. It still resonates there. It's still part of it. And yet you can hear, if you're really paying attention as a listener, or as somebody like myself who was a professional musician, you can hear the DNA of the band. But you can see it's gotten harsher, a little more intense, a little more aggressive, and not at my not trying to harm me as a fan. You're just saying, here's the next steps we're going to. Will you join us?
Yeah, for sure. I do think you're right. There's a huge difference in what we've done there versus like some of the other examples we were talking about. And I think like what we've done is definitely not as jarring. And like Ben said, we sort of calculated that a little bit to make sure that it would work, because we were a little bit worried about that to begin with. Yeah. But I think I like, when we were talking a little bit more generally speaking, I quite like huge changes as a listener, because I'm probably thinking of it more as a musician than a fan. And I think as a musician, I just really like, and I'm inspired by people making those bold decisions and creating something that is true because they want to do it for the art, as opposed to like just people pleasing. But I can empathize with fans when that happens, like the example you gave where they've gone from literally one genre to a completely different genre, and then they've totally alienated their fan base along the way. That's really, really complicated. And I don't see us, I'm not saying for definite down the line, but I don't see us ever taking that big of a leap personally, because we always wanted to stay in this world that we're in now. Yeah. But we just wanted to try and carve out some new sounds, really, as best as we could. I know that's quite a big thing to try and say we want to achieve, but we do really want to have somewhat of a unique voice as best we can out of what is, a very saturated and what is now quite a popular genre at the moment. So we just want to do something a bit different. We're definitely inspired by bands like Loathe and Thornhill and things like that. That's
I love Loathe.
Huge fans of Loathe. Really, really cool. And it's funny because obviously we work with George as well, and but George doesn't want us to be like anyone. He wants to help push us in a direction of our own, which we sort of find quite inspiring. So it helps us a lot.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't think, and I'm sorry for sticking on this, but it's fun to hear your input. Is I don't think you guys have switched up in any way to appease a fan base or to appease a record label, right? I mean, you really are holding true to who you are. And I think that's what's key for listeners of my show. They tend to be bands themselves. And that is, just be truthful, stay who you are, because inevitably fans whether you have a fan base, you know what I mean, or just, you know, fans, and I know you guys know what I mean, they come and they go. Fans are fickle. They like a sound of a moment. They like a feeling or a smell that combines with what you're doing to remind them of a time or a place or a moment or a sexual experience or an alcohol that they've had when they heard your music. That's how people bind with it, right? That's why they play songs at weddings, you know, wedding dances, because this is the song we fell in love with. You see what I'm saying? Yeah. And I think it's so important to just not worry about what the fans, whatever that is, think, because as long as you're loving towards your audience in the sense of trying to create something that you think will inspire them, the fans that go will go, but those new fans will see you're telling the truth. It's the truth that they want. They can find a style or, you know, a genre anywhere, but they want to experience, they want to know you mean what you're doing.
Yeah, definitely. I think people can tell if you're being true as well. Do you know what I mean? Like when the bands that I look up to and that inspire me, I know are doing it because like they're writing the album that I like, and they did it because they wanted to do it and it was true to them. That was the sound that they were going for. Whereas like you can hear when bands have done the album 1x5 thing, and it's like, you know, this one's just for we just want to get more money or whatever it's going to be, you know, or we just want to please our fans or whatever. And I think like going back to the point you made, Rob, about like your listeners and them, some of them being musicians, you know, we're still, you know, finding our own way. But I think so far I feel really, really good about the fact that we've brought to, you know, James and the record label something which we're sticking true to, and like is something that is a bit more of a piece of art for us that we're really happy about and we want to share with all these people. And I think like the people that do check it out, I'm hoping will get the same feeling, like that there's integrity in it and that it's true to us and that it breathes life and emotion. Do you know what I mean? Whereas I think without you know, if we were just chasing Spotify stream numbers or something as opposed to you know what I mean, then I think people would know that, like they'd hear it in the production, they'd hear it in the songwriting, and that's not what we're about, I don't think.
No, it's so true. And I mean, so actually let me ask Ben this. You know, when I think of making choices as a band, I think one of the hardest things is to go in the direction of, I mentioned a second ago, is to go in the direction of truth. Because what happens is in life you have interests, you have the fans here, and then you have the record label or the business element here. And you guys are stuck in the middle and you're trying to go forward. But this is what you have, right? To the listeners of the show, you're looking back and forth between these two elements that have a tremendous amount of influence in where you hope to go and where you are. And I'm curious, how do you, Ben, and then I would like your answer too, Ryan, how do you stay focused on being true to yourself? How do you stick with the best parts of yourself so these things don't get in the way?
Mainly because I don't see it as being a two-way, you know, just two options. You know,
excellent answer.
This isn't
wrong.
You know, I was going to say, this isn't how labels used to be, where it would be like, you know, you have to have this very overproduced sound to do very well, and you know, your audience aren't saying you need to be extremely niched for us to like you. Like, there's so much diversity going on at the minute that it doesn't matter. Like, there's a place for everybody. So as long as you keep just kind of doing the music that you want to do,
you find
you just kind of hope. Yeah, you hope that whoever's searching for that comes to you, or like, you know, you end up finding them, whatever. But I try not to worry too much about thinking about what a label wants musically. Because in my eyes, all a label wants is a band that has their shit together, to be honest. So we try, you know, and we like to have all of our shit together. So that's what we work towards. And, that's just kind of landed in a very lucky place now.
Yeah. Well, but I do want to interfere before Ryan answers his point on this. When you said lucky place, I was thinking about what you guys said earlier. The fact is in 2017, you were a different band. That is true. Yeah. But if you didn't have the core abilities and you didn't have the right DNA in the band, the right set of abilities mingling together to make a really great soup, a bouillabaisse, that sort of idea, it's not gonna work. It doesn't matter. It's all the things. It's the technical skill. It's the beautiful, the je ne sais quoi. It's those certain somethings that occur that only exist when a certain group of individuals get together. And the fact is you guys are badass and super talented, even though you're shifting dynamically and creating a new thing. I can very clearly hear In Fear today and line it up with yesterday. It's just, like I said before, it's just a little more aggressive. It's not like a radical shift, you know? Sorry. I totally screwed up the train of thought, but
no, you're okay. I totally agree with you. I just didn't know if there was more to add, but no, I think you're right. I don't think it is like a huge jump or anything like that. I think, and like you say, it's just more aggressive. There's definitely more identity in the new stuff, but it's not. I don't think we've shown, obviously, with what we're releasing, people haven't heard the full body of work yet, and I think when they do hear that, they might see maybe more of what we've spoken about with some of the more out there sort of songs and things that we've tried to achieve, which I'm really excited about. But I think, like with the point that you made, and just to add to Ben's point, really, Ben's right. I think things are very different now to how they used to be, and where like labels are concerned, that's definitely changed a lot with the rise of streaming and Spotify and, all these other things sort of being the people who dictate, what's popular, as opposed to the labels being in charge of that necessarily. Yeah. So I think there's a huge thing around that as well. And the fact that with the modern streaming era that's sort of had really good benefits for artists, but it's also had drawbacks at the same time. And I think one of the benefits that we've seen, especially in this genre, is that there is more room for like artistic integrity for music, and there's definitely more popularity around that at the moment. But at the same time, there's a negative in that you can see people writing songs for the algorithm almost, because to get popular and get streams, and that's another whole ball game. You know what I mean? So it's interesting to think about that. But to also just hone in on the point or the question was, I was thinking about, I do think that there's a point where it all kind of comes together. So you write a song and the song is good, it's strong, but the song is, if you want to think about it this way, and I know this might sound a bit wrong, but just to try and explain, the song is competitively good. So if you compare it to other songs out there, and you say, right, okay, if I listen to this really good song that's already been successful and I listen to this song that we've written, do I think that it stands up at the same level, whether it's production, whether it's songwriting, whether it's atmosphere, the emotion that it conveys? And I think you, as an artist, you get better and better at understanding where when you create something, whether it holds up against some of those things and how it compares to those things. And I think like once we got to that specific point as a band, that also ties in with your fans, because that if this other thing is doing well, then okay, you can definitely hopefully get fans with what you've got, but then also you'll entice the right people to be interested in you as well. So I think it kind of is a balance of those things, and it all kind of comes together once you've figured out that magic formula, whatever that is. Not saying we figured it out, but I think like as an artist, that's what we all want to get to. We want to work out what that formula is and be able to use it to our advantage. Does that make sense?
It does, but this really drums up a lot of thoughts in my head because when I was in the business in my era, we recorded an album, right? That's what we did. We went into the studio for a month. We recorded an album. We released an album. You know, a label would say, "Here's a few songs. These are the singles," right? The producer would put one of them at the head of the album because he wants that first song to pop. And then he would stick the second single on side 2, track 4, right? That, and I'm talking an album as in a record, right? Record player, old school. And that's the way it was. Nowadays, there's this new way of releasing everything. I'm so excited. I don't know anything that's coming with you guys. I just know what I've heard. And I was begging James to give me the record, but he's like, nope. You know what I mean? And so that for me, that's great as a fan because now I'm intrigued. Okay, where are you taking us? And you mentioned earlier, Ryan, that we're going to have some wild, we're going to have some surprises coming.
Sure.
And yet that doesn't. I don't know how to say it, but sorry, I got distracted. If anybody heard, my door is right there and somebody knocked on my door. I'm unavailable. I'm sorry. Okay. I'm gonna leave that in. Best fans, I record in my house. Yes, that is correct. That is a Christmas tree behind me.
We promised we didn't dox you, Rob, all right?
Yeah. I lost my train of thought, but nowadays, bands release a song, and then a couple weeks or months later, they release another song, and that allows you to sort of slow roll your process, and to build fans in a very organic way because you're just leaking enough for them to go, that's a nice, tasty morsel. I'm hungry for the next one. I wonder when it'll be. Because nowadays, if you release the whole thing, it's like dropping an entire series on Netflix. I can binge it overnight, and then it's gone. Yeah, because we live in a bite-sized world. So I like what you're doing. It's super smart. I just want the whole album now.
And I think that's what we aim for, isn't it? I'm sure Ben will be able to add to it, but I think that's what we aimed for. We thought a lot about the release strategy. Like, how do we release this stuff, and how do we keep people interested in us, and how do we sort of hopefully grow a following along the way? So there was a lot of thought that went into that, wasn't there, Ben?
Yeah, it was just mainly daunting. Like releasing an album in this day and age at the stage we're at is a very scary thing because, like you said, it's like it gets uploaded to Netflix, except it's not Netflix. It's like off-brand Netflix that only a few people subscribe to.
Right, Tubo.
So exactly. so you're going like, what happens if I put all this effort into this record? We spent all this money. We do a standard release, and it gets like, I don't know, few thousand views or something like that. That would be kind of a little bit soul destroying. I mean, not so much because we're proud of we'd be proud of the album, but we'd want enough people to also be proud of that.
Yeah. You want people to fall in love with it.
Yeah. So nowadays, as you said, everything's like bite-sized. People need to have something in front of their face 24/7 to remember that it's there because there's so much else being shoved in their face 24/7.
Yeah.
So this was kind of like the best way to do that and make sure that every single track gets the love that we gave it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way of thinking about it. We were certainly inspired by, because we pay attention to a lot of the stuff that goes on around us, like whether it's other bands and things, and we were certainly inspired by what we've seen. Like, we've seen bands grow very quickly over the last couple of years, and sort of like we've looked at like what they've done that we think was successful and what perhaps is changed since then and why that wouldn't work if you tried to do it again now. And we've thought about how we could do our own version of that and what would work best. And I think we've sort of landed on this idea of, like you said, just giving people like a morsel, like a little bit. So at the moment we're just giving them a couple of songs every few weeks and not really saying much about it. And it's kind of like, I love that. I'm so keen for it. I think it's really cool. Because we've got a lot of music in our sort of rucksack, if you like, and we're just sort of like going, here you go, here's another one.
I mean,
think of that.
The new album doesn't even come out till May, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's called All Is All Shall Be.
Yeah.
That's the one.
So when this drops, we will have most likely announced the album at that point, and I can't wait. No, it's all right. I put it in the thing.
Yeah, I saw. Yeah. So anybody listening, this has been recorded a while before it actually comes out. Just that's why there's a Christmas tree back here.
So yeah, I mean, we're like, to get that announcement out there and say that we've got an album, that's going to be exciting as well. And that's coming, in the next couple of weeks. So I can't wait for people to go, oh, there's way more music than this. Do you know what I mean? Because at the moment people don't realize that, and we're on like single number 3 coming out in like next week or whatever.
Next week,
and it's just like people don't know. It's cracking me up. I love it.
Yeah.
So excited for it.
Oh my God. So can you talk about upcoming tour potential? I get it. Look, I'm in the States. I get it. I may not see you guys for 10 years. I mean, that's just how it works. It's very expensive to go overseas. I get that. But do you expect, upon this release, I mean, with James or whoever's doing your booking, are you guys in the planning stages to do some European dates? Are you going to be just going around the UK? What's your strategy regarding that? Can you talk about it?
Yeah, we can talk about it for sure. We've got a couple of sort of one-off dates in the UK in between January and the album release. But in the meantime, we've got a tour that's coming up in March with, I don't know if it's been fully announced, but there's a couple of bands that we played with from UK Tech Fest that are touring with us.
Okay.
In March, and that's just around the UK. And then in May, for the album release tour, we're looking at another UK tour for that. We haven't actually played in Europe yet as a band, so that would be like a new venture for us. But it's something that we're really keen to do in the near future. But I think, and I'm sure like Ben would agree, I don't think if we'd done it, if we'd done it in the last couple of years, I mean, we couldn't because of COVID anyway, but I think if we'd done it, I don't think it would have been the right time for us. I think now that we're doing this and we're looking at this album release, and, I think we've sort of fallen on our feet in terms of we're really happy with the music and where we are as a band and the image and the artistic stuff. So I think to do a European tour or even something else during that period would be amazing for us, when we're really keen for that. But currently we don't have anything booked like that, but I'm hoping we will in the near future.
I mean, to be honest, I think that previously, like maybe if, like you said, this happened a couple of years back, it probably would have just been a one-off show in Europe. And I think it's kind of better if we wait until we can actually do something big there. Like we could go out on a 2-week tour around Europe and visit a load of different places. I think that would be way more special as your first time playing Europe than just doing a one-off in Poland or something.
But I'd love to see you on a festival circuit of some kind. I mean, I think you certainly belong there. And again, going back to what I said before, you can't be, it's not that my show is so important, that's not what I mean, but you can't get to a certain level with a certain group of influencers in the business without having a sound and a style and something that pops. So there's clearly something happening with you guys. It's not like you're an accidental discovery on YouTube or Instagram. You know what I mean? And you're not you're not spamming me. People are talking about you. And that's an exciting thing to be in the center of. And you mentioned Tech Fest a second ago. Was Frontierer at that show?
Oh wait, wrong sleeve. Tech Fest.
He's wearing the hoodie.
Was Frontierer there? That's the Scottish band with the American singer, the tech metal band.
I've seen Frontierer, I think twice at Tech Fest. I think once in 2016, and
Ben's a Tech Fest veteran.
Okay,
I know, mate.
You didn't know.
It's a favorite festival in the UK, mate. Okay. It's great.
It's sick. Love it, man. Absolutely love it.
Yeah. I would love to see you guys tour with like Monasteries or I don't know. I mean, even a band like Caskets.
Oh yeah,
It would be great because they're certainly much more on the pop side, but you guys have the same sort of underlying DNA code, this catchy, young, youthful, vibey feel that you can't have when you're an old fart like me.
Well, I think the closest you'll actually get is that Hayden, our vocalist, he does loads of features for Monasteries.
Oh wow! Really?
Well, not on track, but he does loads live. There's, I'm sure there's videos about it somewhere. But
like,
him and Josh are good mates.
Oh
yeah,
Josh's voice is absolutely mad.
Yeah, it's amazing.
When they released Lilac last year, I'm telling you, man. I mean, for listeners who are now rolling their eyes. All you have to do with Lilac is put on the last 25 seconds and you'll get the whole vibe of what that piece is about. But I have never heard, and I'm sorry because I'm talking about their band on your show.
No, it's all good. We like Monasteries, man.
I have never heard an ending like that ever in the history of music. That is really something. And I guess what I'm trying to say is you guys deserve to be in that space because you're heady, you're intriguing, you're interesting, you're super cool guys. You're obviously willing to sort of pay the price to find your voice. You don't have an agenda. You just care about the music. And like I said, the fans will find you. And yeah, you just deserve to be out there and to be heard. I just hope people can plug you in with great touring partners so you really get those bodies in front of you because you really have something special.
Thank you, man. That's really, really kind. We really appreciate that. We honestly, like, I mean, we've played some festivals in the UK, one of them being UK Tech Fest. We played it twice, and they were so supportive of us. They gave us such a good opportunity. Like last year, they put us on the main stage, which is amazing for us. And like, if we can get more opportunities like that, then I'd be over the moon because I really want to play in front of these kinds of crowds, but also with these kind of bands that you were talking about. Like Monasteries are a great example because they're an up and coming band that have that again that voice, and they're what they're doing is really fucking cool. And they're very talented. So yeah, to be in that sphere would be incredible for us. We've sort of started working with similar bands like that. I mean, and the tours that we've got coming up next year are sort of within those realms, I guess. But to be on festival stages and things, perhaps European festivals is where we'd love to try and
that'd be so sick.
Yeah, exactly. So just to get some variety and get ourselves out there. Yeah, exactly.
That would be nice.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Oh my God, that'd be so amazing. Well, I want to ask you this before, I know we're getting close to that end zone time. I would love to talk to you guys for hours and hours, but I think my listeners would glaze over after 2 hours. There's something I believe in as a musician I call doing the thing. And what I mean by that is there's always a dream. Every musician has this dream, and most people don't talk about it. And that is when you're a young person, younger than you guys are, but when you're really young and you're first starting in the music business, you learn how to play drums, you learn how to play guitar, you learn how to sing or write a song. There's this sort of vision you have of where you expect yourself to go, right? The Rockstar dream, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And it will never ever look like where you imagined it. It never will. It doesn't happen to anybody. It didn't happen to Elvis that way. It does never go where you think it's going to go. But because there's a moment, like for me, I always knew, like if I was standing on stage and Rudy Sarzo from Quiet Riot and John 5, you know what I mean? All these great sort of heavy rock musicians that I am into, I'd be able to turn around and see the audience behind me and take a photo knowing that I just did a show with these guys on stage, people I was influenced by. That would be what I call doing the thing. I'd be able to die knowing I did the thing. I met my dream. Do you have a dream that you would like to meet that you're open to sharing out loud?
Oh, that's a really cool question. I like that. Yeah,
nothing so specific. Then obviously I've got smaller bucket list things, like I'd like to play main stage. Well, not main stage, but I'd like to play Download festival at some point.
Yeah.
That's been a dream of mine since since I was like 7 years old, and my brother used to go off to like some of the first like Monsters of Rock and that.
Yeah. Awesome.
Like things like that. I've got things like just playing an O2 Academy around the UK. Like again, that's another bit of a bucket list thing. I don't really sit there and think about the big ones. I'm not thinking like, Metallica, Moscow. No.
Sure. Hookers and blow on an airplane. Yeah. No, I get it.
But no, I focus on the little goals. That way you really appreciate the smaller moments when you get there.
Yeah.
I was gobsmacked when we played Main Stage Tech Fest, just getting out there and having a stage that was, bigger than your mum's basement.
Yeah, and that was that fest didn't it have wasn't it like the audience was in between two brick walls? If I maybe I'm thinking
it's in an aircraft hangar.
That's what it is.
Yeah. It's in a massive aircraft hangar, and the stage is at the back portion of that. But it is a full sort of like wall to wall, proper risers and all of this stage. So that was a really cool experience. Like first time being on a stage that sort of size, having a load of people just there waiting for you to do your thing.
Yeah. I think for me, I agree with Ben. It's quite hard to be specific with some of it, and I think actually as you do music for longer, the dream changes. Do you know what I mean? Because like when
you're just sat there behind your Mac, just there, like my dream is to finish programming these drums.
literally. But like when I started, I started playing guitar from like metalcore, 2000s metalcore bands was what I was into when I started playing guitar. And then I remember vividly the reason why I wanted to play in a band as opposed to like just playing my instrument was I watched Parkway Drive do their like documentary for one of their albums, and it's like the one that's on YouTube there that most people of our age that play this kind of music have probably seen. And I saw that, and I saw them playing around Europe and like different countries and stuff to like different size crowds. Like some of them were enormous. Like they played a huge stage in England, like a mainstream festival. And then they played like tiny little stages in like countries in the middle of nowhere and stuff like that. And I was watching that and I was just like, man, I really want to do that. It's so cool. So like for me, I think I'd love to play main stage at a festival like Download. That would be one of my bucket list things that I think if I did that, I'd be like, wow, this is like, one of my biggest all-time achievements ever for life. But also just to have like a proper big European tour across, a couple of months or whatever it's going to be with an amazing headline band as a support. That would be amazing for me. Nice. Just to be able to get out there in front of some new faces and play the music. Like I'd feel so good about that and get to do that with Ben and like my other mates in the band. That would be so sick. I think that'd be awesome.
Yeah. I want to add on that. I do want to add on that because you reminded me then. One dream is actually tour bus. If there's any point we have a tour bus, just because it's so...
It's the stereotype.
So annoying. No. I just mean touring in the UK is just so annoying. Like it's just sitting in a cramped van and then like trying to figure out where you're going to stay that night, blah, blah, blah. Just to go on a tour where all of that is sorted. You just get on bus and bus go.
Yeah.
If we can have a moment like that, that will be a big bucket list moment for me.
I agree with you on that. That would be one of mine as well. I did think about it when I was talking about the tour. I was like, oh man, Nightliner, how good would that be?
Yeah, that would be pretty sweet. Although I was talking with Ryan Van Pooteroyen from Devon Townsend a couple years ago, and his mention of the tour bus life was that what he didn't like was that nobody stops farting. Everybody, right? Everybody farts the whole time, and you're literally sleeping 3 feet away from somebody's butt all the time. So that's got to get old, especially because, as you know, when you go on tour, you don't get a chance to take showers very often.
No,
so you're sticky, gross. All the goo.
I mean, we've had a lot worse situations than that. Yeah, go on then. Why not?
He's
we
like,
went
do
out
I
on our-
tell you or not?
Yeah, I might as well. When we went out on our very first tour, well, it wasn't even a tour. It was like a long weekender. But yeah, we hired a van, we got a driver, and all that. We didn't really think about where we were sleeping, so I think it was like after Manchester we played, and we drove about an hour outside of Manchester into like some woods, parked up
To
there.
be properly murdered.
Oh yeah. Oh, when we woke up in the morning, it was on like the side of a cliff. We were
Oh, my
about
God.
what, like 10 feet away from the end of the cliff. You couldn't see. Anyway, not the point. What we did to sleep was we ended up taking out the seats of the van and then chucking them in the back with the rest of the gear. And then there were, I want to say 4 of us in the footwell of this transit van, all literally like basically
Nut to butt.
spooning. Yeah.
Oh, it's so bad.
I woke up in the morning. I was on the last row of chairs, like above everyone else, and I just heard our vocalist Jake at the time just fart, and I was just looked at him and I was like, "Mate, did you just on him?"
Yeah.
Right there. So then everyone just started scrambling for the door of the van.
Yeah, you guys could do your own version of the human centipede. Nobody would mind.
It was better than Els. We chucked him in the boot. He was just there in the pitch black for the whole day and couldn't get out.
Yeah, just sitting there on his own with those fucking seats.
Well, one of you, I want to get to this before I let you go, because you guys had mentioned you had a funny story about a Mexican restaurant where like a homeless guy. Okay, so tell the listeners a story on that. I'd like to hear that.
Oh man, that was so funny. That was so we played this Mexican restaurant. Where was it, Ben? Do you remember?
It was Norwich.
Yeah, so it was in the UK, and I just remember like we were told about the show, and we were told that the venue was really, really small, and we were like, oh, well, that's fine. We don't mind like a tiny venue. But then our manager at the time was like, no, this is small. Like, you've not played this small. You probably never will again.
Yeah.
And we were like, oh, it can't be that bad. And we got there, and it's like, honestly, it was like, what was it, like 2 meters wide? It was probably not even that.
Oh no, it was something dumb like that. It was barely as wide as the drum kit.
Yeah, and that was there was no stage, and it was just a room, and it was like 2 meters by 2 meters, or like 2 meters by 3 meters, or something. It was so small.
Yeah,
and they didn't have a sound guy, so we were just like, I did sound for everyone, and there was no point having a sound guy. That wasn't like a
too loud
a
for
dunk on them, but it was just that there was literally no point, because there was the gear and everything there. It was just too loud in that tiny little room. So you just had to experience everything as it was, like, you know, cabs, drums, like not mic'd up, like one microphone and like tiny little PA. It was really funny. And so we got there, and we were going to play this gig thinking, oh, well, if we get like 10 people here, then this is still going to be a really cool show, because it's a tiny venue. No one showed up.
literally
not a soul.
No one.
Yeah. Not a soul.
We went outside. Who was it that went outside? Was it one of the BTT guys?
Yeah, I think
it was.
Yeah.
They went outside, and they got a homeless person to come in.
Like paying somebody to come in.
They've got like the sleeping bag bundled up in their arms, and they walk in, and it's like, oh yeah, you're right.
And that was it. They were like throwing down, and it was just the homeless person, and that was it. That was the only person at the show. But then it was just the most weird thing, because you walked out of this tiny little room, because that was the most hilarious part. You walk out of the room, and then there's just like the bar area of the Mexican restaurant with like the stools. And you walk through, and it's just like, oh, I'm in a Mexican restaurant, and there's this tiny little gig room. It's like, what are we doing here, man?
Yeah. But you know what? Without those, I mean, that's the charm of the business. It's almost like being a cop. You don't know what you're going to experience from day to day. You just know you hope you survive it.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And I think that's what it's like being on tour is okay, so you can't poop in the bus. In your case, right? You can't poop in the van. You've got to figure it out. Or, you know, the van, the jars that everybody pees in, right? That sort of stuff, because we got to keep going. We got to get to the next gig. It's a strange life, but the beauty of being a musician is the crazy that's built in behind it. There's no way to live a life of anything. There's no way to be happy if you don't stick to it, because it's who you are. It's I've said it before, I'll say it again. It's in your DNA. This is who you are. You would be lost if you had to be a factory worker or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ow.
Yeah. No, Ben says that because it's so funny, because if he didn't do music, then he'd be a factory worker probably.
Wouldn't everybody in the UK?
Yeah, exactly. It's like we'd all be stuck doing that, and we've all got dreams and ambitions. Like we want to eventually not have to do those kinds of things, we all just want to do this for our career. But it's funny because you have to go through that sort of like trial audition process where it's like almost like initiation to be a musician. You got to play these gigs where there's nobody there except the homeless person outside at a Mexican restaurant, and it's like everyone's had that. I spoke to a couple of bands that I know that are a bit more successful than us, or a lot more successful, should I say? And they've all had those shows. They've all had ones like where someone's sweeping the floor like while they're playing, or whatever it's going to be. Do you know what I mean? It's everyone's had it. So it's just that trial by fire.
Spinal Tap moments. Everybody's had Spinal Tap.
Exactly.
Well, man, I mean, look. I really do love the band. It's it's new on my radar too, but In Fear's great. You guys are coming up. You're not going anywhere. I know this for real. You've made these big evolutionary changes that are significant. You released Abyss and proved it. You've got a new song, I think, coming out in a couple of days called the Blinding White. I think is
so the big single coming out in January is the Blinding White, which by the time this comes out will be the one that we'll be talking about. So that one's going to be really cool. Very excited for the Blinding White because again it's sonically different to the other ones that we're releasing at the moment. So I think people are going to really enjoy that one.
Well, I think it might be the favorite my favorite music video we've ever done.
Cool. It's a very cool music video.
Cool. Well, then I'm looking forward to experiencing that with everybody else. But I really do want to thank you. I want to thank obviously James, you're the Ret Records, for getting you guys to me. I'm begging my listeners to go out and pick up the new record when this drops, to follow the band on all their socials. Great guys, sweet natured, deserve the best. I want the best for you. And one of these days when I get my hiney over to the UK, I'm coming up to Bristol for a lot of reasons. And now there's another one. So we'll get together. I'll buy you a pint and we'll hang. Does that sound good?
Sounds good, man.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Really appreciate it, and thanks for all the kind words, dude, and for having us on. We really appreciate the opportunity. And shout out to everyone that's given us the time of day and is like willing to check us out, because we really appreciate it. And let us know like what you wanna hear, really, whether you want us to drop more music in the future, whether you enjoy it and whatnot. But thank you so much, Rob. Really appreciate it.